Hey fam, I am back with video number 9, the woman, her essence, her purpose, her role, her power. This is either going to be a 9-part series or a 10-part series. So there's a 50-50 chance today which way this is going to go. I can't say, I'm not sure. There's a lot of things that I would like to share and talk about, but I don't really want to take too much time, so I think I'm going to leave those things for the end of this video or for the next video when I actually wrap things up, and we'll see what that's going to be. But I want to open up today with 2 Timothy chapter 3. Now, today what I want to focus on is a couple of things. The first one I'm going to open up with 2 Timothy chapter 3 because 2 Timothy chapter 3 is a perfect example of how life is not supposed to be, of how Yah did not intend life to be. So I'm going to read that. I'm going to share my heart a little bit on that. And then I'm going to go to the first chapter of the Gospel according to John. I'll be reading verses 1 through 9. I want to juxtapose a little bit the life, the message, and the mission of Yahushua and the seed of the woman. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And then I also want to talk about this woman that we know as Eve, and talk a little bit about her name, and just kind of look into get a deeper meaning of what her name means. Because when we talk about the Hebraic mindset, one of the things that we really need to understand is that a name is not just a name. So in the Greco-Roman mindset, in this culture that we live in, that most of us have been educated in, this mindset, their way of understanding is nothing like the Hebraic mindset. It's like night and day. They're totally different. And so when we think about the Hebraic mindset, a name had to do with a role. A name had to do with a purpose. A name had to do with a function. If it didn't have a function, a name, a role, if it didn't do something, if it didn't impact something in some way, then, questionably, did it even exist? So everything had a purpose and a role to play, and that role impacted something. So when we think about the name in terms of Hebraic mindset, I really want us to think about it in that way, because as we get into the name of this woman that we know of as Eve, I want us to think about her in that way. I want us to think about her in terms of not just her essence of, as I've gone over, but in essence of in her purpose, in her role, and in her power. How did Yah design her? How did he put her together? What was she supposed to reveal? What did he want to do through her? What did he want to do in her? Why did he decide to create her right alongside her male counterpart? So that's what I want to get into today. That's going to be the focus of today's video. And if I can, I'm going to be wrapping it up today, and this will be the conclusion of this series, The Woman, Her Essence, Her Purpose, Her Role, Her Power. Or I will get into video 10, and that will be the conclusion. But I'm going to go ahead and start today with 2 Timothy chapter 3. I'm going to read the whole chapter, and then I just have a couple of comments. The other thing that I want to say real quickly is, whereas I was going to spend more time kind of going into the Strongs and looking at a lot of different things, and I will go into the Strongs today, I'm not going to do it nearly as much as, I'm not going to go into it nearly as deep as I was going to. I think, well, for me, part of the reason why it's been so long between part 8 and part 9 is not because the video was not recorded, because it certainly was, in fact, several times. I just realized that in going through it just, as I played it over and over again, the 3 times that I actually recorded it was just too choppy, and I did not like the way things were. And so I like it better when I can connect more with you, my viewer, and when I can share just more of my heart and just simply talk and not spend a lot of time going to, all these different things. Sometimes I think that's really important, but sometimes I just simply want to connect with you, the viewer. And this is one of those times. So what I'm going to do, and what I've decided to do, is put all of the information in the description box. In terms of the Strongs, I'll put the link that you can go to for those of you who, I think a lot of people do, but I'm going to put the link in there anyway. And all you have to do is just click on that link, and that's going to take you to the Strongs. I'll tell you exactly which words to put in and exactly what to look at, so then you can go and you can do your own study. Because when it really comes down to it, we're distracted a lot in the society with a lot of different things, and we're people who like to be entertained, me as much as anybody else. But the reality is the only thing that is going to get us where we need to be as individuals, as a people, and then in seeing Yah's kingdom come be manifest on this earth in its fullness. The only thing that's going to get us there is when we not only understand who we are, but understand what we are called to do in terms of who we are. And I'm going to get into that later when I do a series, probably on I may even do a series on 2 Timothy chapter 3 itself, just because there's a lot in this to unpack and a lot in this to break apart. But I'm not gonna talk much more than that, because I've already taken up almost 6 minutes. So I'm reading from the gospel. I'm reading from 2 Timothy chapter 3, and this is the King James Version. Okay, so it says here, "This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. For of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden with sins, led away with diverse lusts, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Now as Jannes and Jambres withstood Moses, so do these also resist the truth. Men of corrupt minds reprobate concerning the faith. But they shall proceed no further, for their folly shall be manifest unto all men, as theirs also was. But thou hast fully known my doctrine, manner of life, purpose, faith, long suffering, charity, patience." This is Paul writing to Timothy. "Persecutions, afflictions, which came unto me at Antioch, at Iconium, at Lystra, what persecutions I endured, but out of them all the Lord delivered me. Yea, and all that will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. But continue thou in the things which thou hast learned and hast seen, and hast been assured of, knowing of whom thou hast learned them, that from a child thou hast known the holy scriptures, which are able to make thee wise unto salvation through faith which is in Christ Jesus. All scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God, that man being G444, not G435. G435 is male, G444 is human being. That the man or woman of God may be perfect, thoroughly furnished unto all good works." So I want to stop right there real quick. There's a couple of things I wanted to go over, because I woke up this morning and for whatever reason, this was on my mind, and I had looked at it before, but I just felt like y'all started bringing it up again. So there's a couple of things that I want to bring out. The first thing that I want to bring out is, in the last days, perilous times shall come. That word perilous, I'm not going to go to a great degree of, the name and all that. I'll leave it in the description box. But it means, it's kalepas, and it means to take, to approach, hard to bear, troublesome, dangerous, harsh, fierce, savage. That's the adjective. That's what describes what the last days are like. Now, how that's going to play out, that G5465 comes, G5467 comes from G5465, which is the verb. And how does that look? How does that look in today's society? Well, in today's society, it's through the idea of reducing strength. It's like, have you ever just felt like that you just get tired? Like, you see all of these things that are happening and they trouble you so much that it almost just wears you down. It wears, as my mom would say, wears you out. You're just simply tired and exhausted from all the things that are taking place. And I believe that this expresses what these times are like. So through the idea of reducing the strength, difficult, dangerous, by implication, furious, fierce. And it comes from G5465, which is to lower, to let down, to loosen, to slacken, to relax, from a higher place to a lower place. And I believe this goes back to in talking about the higher consciousness, because when we talk about the higher consciousness, the fall of man in the book of Genesis, from that higher place to that lower place, that the consciousness, our way of being and knowing in this world, produces the condition. So the conscious of man produces the condition of society. The conscious of man produces the family, the society. Whatever we see on the outside, the dynamics, the condition of what we see of our environment, it always goes back to the conscious of man. And they interplay one with another. So that the conscious of man produces the condition, but then the condition in turn reinforces the consciousness of man. So this means to relax, to let down from a higher place to a lower place. And it's almost like we would see in the book of Mark. Remember when the Yahushua was teaching in one of the houses and they couldn't get in, and they had a friend who was probably paralyzed, whatever was wrong with him, he couldn't walk. So they tore a hole in the roof and they let him down. So coming literally from a higher place to a lower place. And that's the way that we need to understand what this whole idea is like when it talks about pearl, is what this is like. This is the result of man from being at a higher place, but then coming down, unfortunately, to degrading, I'll say, to a lower place. And that men would be lovers of themselves rather than lovers of the Most High. And because they're lovers of themselves, that this whole love that they have for self, this is what produces what we see in today's society. And this is why it was so important in that first commandment where Yah said that you are to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. Because when we love him as ourselves, then we're going to live according to his heart. The things that are important to him are going to be important to us. We're going to be conformed to his way of being, his way of knowing, his way of doing things. And so that God consciousness, that higher consciousness, is going to be what produces his kingdom, or this society that is based on what is godly instead of based on what is unrighteous. So looking here at 2 Timothy chapter 3, the other thing that it says here in verse 4, after it says that they're going to be traitors, heady, high-minded, it says that they are lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. And that goes back into what I just said. They love pleasure. They love themselves. And we live in that kind of society today. If you think about it, I mean, let's just consider all the stores, all of the movie theaters, all of the, you think of it, you can pretty much probably get whatever you want, whatever your craving is, be that for food or anything else. You can get whatever you want wherever you want to get it. You can find it somewhere. And so this society, it goes back to what I talked about. There are so many things in society that we're distracted by that feed into this way of being that Yah never intended. He never intended for us to live like this, because he never intended for our greatest love to be self. He never intended for our greatest love to be pleasure. He intended for our greatest love to be him. And when our greatest love is him, then that is going to change. That's going to change our consciousness in our way of knowing the world and knowing self, but it's going to change the dynamics of society because we have a different way of knowing and have a different standard for living. And so there's a reason why in the last days perilous time shall come. And it goes back to the love of man and his love for self, his love for pleasure, rather than his love for the Most High. So the other thing that I want to bring up is Paul said here when he wrote to Timothy in chapter 3, he said, yea, and all that will live godly in Christ Jesus and Yahushua, in Yahushua HaMashiach, shall suffer persecution. I know a lot of times I'm like me, like anybody else. I would like to think that, you know, at some point in this world, as long as we have this power structure, meaning the powers that be, that the power structure that they have established and created, as long as that is in place, it would be nice to think that there's going to be a time where things are going to be easy. There's not. Our lives are not going to be very much different from what we saw from the prophets in the Old Testament, from what we saw with Yahushua, from what we saw with the disciples and the apostles. Our lives are not going to be much different because we're all fighting the same fight. We're like a salmon swimming upstream, and we're going against the current. And that's why Yahushua said in Matthew chapter 7, I believe it is, where he said, enter at the straight gate. If you look up that word straight, it literally means you're having a hard time getting where you need to be, because it's narrowed by the obstacles, by the challenges, by the hard things that we need to face, or that we're going to face. And even in the book of Hebrews, it tells us how Yahushua learned obedience through what he suffered. And this is not really something that people like to talk about. It's personally not something that I even like to hear or like to talk about, but it is really the truth. And any time that we're going in that direction, these are the things that we're going to suffer, because we're going against the current. We're going against the power structure, and we're literally going against the mindset of society. So we're going to have a lot of people that are going to disagree with us, and that are not going to, they're going to push back against these things that we believe and the way that we choose to live our lives, be it honoring the Sabbath or not celebrating Christmas or not celebrating Thanksgiving. There's a lot of things that people are that we're going to get pushback on. And those are probably the easier things. The weightier things are just simply the persecution that we're going to suffer as we as a people become more conformed to who he is, and we come together as a people, and we understand not only who we are as a people, but what it is that he is calling us to do. So Paul says here, yea, and all that will live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse. They're going to get worse. The times are going to get worse. Deceiving people and being deceived. But continue thou in the things which thou hast learned and hast been assured of, knowing from whom thou hast learned them, that from a child thou hast known the holy scripture, which are able to make thee wise unto salvation. Again, there is nothing more important for us out of everything that we do. There is nothing more important for us to make sure that we're spending time with Yah and in his word, that we are meditating on his word, that we are allowing ourselves to be taught, that we are gathering together with the brothers and sisters, and that we are drawing strength from each other. There's very little, if anything at all, I would say, that is more important than that, because that is what is going to get us to the final destination. And the other thing that I want to say is that as we are moving through this process of becoming more and more like him, the change and the transformation is not in the destination, it's in the process. Because a lot of times we talk about the end destination, we talk about, the kingdom, and we talk about when we see his kingdom in his fullness, and we will be like him because we will see him as he is. But it's really in this journey that the change actually takes place. And that's like that in anything that we do when we go through life. If I was to become a teacher, well, I used to teach, but if I was to become a teacher or certified in, mine was science, secondary science, but let's say I decided to, go into philosophy, there would be a process that I would have to go through. And the knowledge that I would gain, what would then qualify me to do that at the end, would be what would happen in the journey. So a lot of times we don't really look at the journey as the thing that's important, but that's where the transition actually takes place. As we go through the journey, we are actually transitioning into becoming godly and more like him. And so we can't despise the journey or push back on the journey or run from it, because that's the thing that is causing us to be transformed into his likeness, from being changed in his image from glory to glory. So that is extremely important. And then remembering verse 17, where it says that the man of God may be perfect, thoroughly furnished unto all good works. It's the word of the Most High. It is the word of Yah that is going to help us to be changed and transformed into who he wants us to be. So I wanted to bring that out because 2 Timothy chapter 3 gives us a picture of a society not unlike what we live in today. In fact, I would go so far to say it's almost like a mirror image of what we're dealing with today. We are certainly living in the last days, and we're certainly living in perilous times. And we see it every single day. But there's a reason why we're living in these times. And I shared 2 Timothy chapter 2, 2 Timothy chapter 3, because this is not the way that Yah intended life to be. This is not the way that he intended us to experience life. This is not the way that when we wake up and sometimes we can be full of fear, we can be full of anxiety. This is not the way he wanted us to experience life. This was not in his plan. When our foreparents decided to function out of a different consciousness that produced a different condition, this is what it produced. But this was not Yah's plan from the beginning. So now I am going to flip over to the Gospel according to John, and I'm going to read verses 1 through 9. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. And I'll just throw in verse 10 too. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. So I wanted to read the Gospel according to John chapter 1, because I think in the Gospel of John chapter 1 we see this juxtaposition as opposed to Genesis. When we see Yahushua coming into the world, John is referring us back to the Word, because he says here, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That Word that created this earth, that Word that created mankind, that world that created our cosmos and all that we see, that world that created not only the cosmos in its way of being, but in how it functions, in all of the different parts of our world, and how they interact with each other, these relationships that they have, and what these relationships produce. All of these things were created by the Most High, and that was the Word that was spoken forth that we see in the beginning. It was that Word that was with God, and it was that Word that was God, in the sense of the impact that we saw. As he spoke and we saw things come about, what we saw come about, that was God. That was a result of, the source of that was the Most High. So this is important, because when we see Yahushua coming into this world, in the same way that Yah spoke in the beginning, and he spoke the Word, and it was the Word that gave us life, it was the Word that caused us to live in the beginning. If we want to gain life eternal, then we need to go back and look at what gave us life initially. So the thing that gave us life initially was the Word. The thing that's going to give us life eternally is the Word. And so there's this juxtaposition taking place, and he's causing us to revisit Yah's Word, because if we want to have life, if we want to know life, then we need to know his Word. If we want to walk in the way of life, then we need to conform to his Word, and we need to understand the place that the Word holds in our life, so that when Yah spoke everything into being, that was the power that was not just that brought everything into being, but that was going to cause everything to continue to operate the way that he wanted it to operate. And even when it comes to mankind. So when Yah said, let us make man in our image, and man was formed, and he blew his breath into man, he wasn't just blowing just air into man. It wasn't just air. He was blowing his knowledge, his power, his ability to love, to be creative, to express mercy, compassion, to have intelligence, consciousness, to be conscious of self. All these different things that he was blowing into man, because once he blew into man, man became a living soul. Man became a living being. And we could almost look at soul and consciousness as synonymous one with another. It's almost being the same thing, because we know that we have to work on our soul salvation. It's in our conscious, in that place of our soul, in this seat of our will, of our mind, of our emotions, our way of being. That's what needs to be saved. That's what needs to come into salvation. So when I talk about this God conscious, when I talk about the higher consciousness, that's what I'm talking about. It's where our foreparents fell from, but where Yah is transforming us and what he wants to bring us back to. So now we're looking at the book of John, and John is opening up and saying, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was with God in the beginning. All things were made by the Word, and without the Word, that Word that he spoke in the beginning, nothing was made that has been made. So it is the source, it is the origin, for the essence for everything that we see in our world. It was the Word of the Most High. So then we go on, and it says here, it says in again in verse 3, all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And this is important because he came to express, he came to show us the Word in real time. The Word that he came to express and to show us, that was light. That was the light that becomes our life, because as we saw him live, as we saw his devotion to his Father, this consciousness, his way of being and knowing in this world, this is what we as a people are supposed to embrace. This is how we are supposed to live our life. And as we model our heart, our mind, our lives, everything about us, as we model it after him, that is the illumination of the way that Yah intended life to be lived. And so in him was life, and the life in him was the light of men, because we had fallen so far away in terms of our consciousness, in terms of what Yah wants to do in and through us. We've fallen so far away from that it was almost like we were enshrouded in darkness. And so once again, the same way that he spoke light in the beginning, now we see him once again sending light into darkness. But this time, instead of speaking it per se only, now he's given it flesh. And now we see this light coming into the darkness again, lighting up the darkness, separating the light from the darkness, and showing us the way to life, showing us the way that we need to walk, showing us the way to truth, which is revisiting his Word, which is the thing that gave us life from the very beginning. So that Yahushua then comes into this world to show us the way that life is supposed to be lived, to show us who we are as mankind, to show us who we are and who the Most High is to us, to show us the Father, that he loves us, that he is having mercy on us, compassion on us, to show us the grace that he desires to give us, the grace that he desires to fill us with, that he desires to bring salvation to us. So he's coming into the darkness, and he's showing us all of these things. And it is this that he's coming to express and to reveal to us. That is the light. That is the life in him that then becomes the light of men. And so this is important to share, because when we look at the life of Yahushua, when we look at his message, when we look at his mission, if we were to look at that word life is G2222 in the Greek. It is Zoe, and it means life. It is from G2198. I'm going to put all this in the description box. And it is Zao. It means to live, lifetime, alive, alively, quick. He came to give us life. He is the life giver. He is the carrier of life. So now what I want to do is I want to jump over to the book of Genesis. And I'm not going to so much go to, well, yeah, I will. I'm going to go to the passage where it talks about how she would become the mother of all living. So I'm going to go there, because in understanding who Yahushua is, that he is the life giver, that he is the one who carries life, that he came to give us life, that he came to show us life. I want to now juxtapose that to this woman that we know of as Eve. And let's see if I can find it here, because I hadn't intended to go to this one, but this was after the fall, and it says here, let's see if I can find it. Okay, so let me see here. So this is the one, it's actually the passage where, let me look it up real quick. It's actually the passage where, I know I'm overlooking it because I'm in the book of Genesis chapter 3. And it's where it says that Adam named his wife Eve because she would become the mother of all living. All right. So this is Genesis chapter 3, verse 20. I know I was overlooking it. All right. So here it says here in Genesis chapter 3, verse 20, and Adam called his wife's name Eve because she would become the mother of all living. There's something that I want to say in regard to that, because up until I did this study, I always thought, and I'm not saying when I make this statement, it doesn't mean that the opposite is not true. It just means that I'm considering it in a different way. But it says she would become the mother of all living. And I always thought that just meant all human beings. Like, and it may, and it probably does to some degree. But as I began to dig into her name and to see what her name means, it makes me wonder if, when it talks about the living, is it just those who breathe or those who live? Is it just those who experience surface life or just this animalistic life? And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean, sometimes people just exist. Like they just breathe, and they go to day to day, but they never really experience what it means to really live. They just know what it means to breathe, basically. And I believe that Yah intends so much more for us. As a matter of fact, I would go so far to say that probably most of us, I don't believe that I have personally, really know what it means to live life, to really live, to experience life as he intended for us to experience it. We know that that's what he has for us in mind, but to be free from the oppression that we face, to be free from, having to get up and say, go to work every day, and to understand what it means to live in our humanity in its fullness, to be creative, to own our own modes of production, to not have somebody dictate these things, to not be exploited in these different ways that we as a people are exploited, to not live in a system like this where we have been led to believe that we're free, but we're not really free, to where we've been led to believe that we're living and experiencing life, but we're not really. To really experience life. I don't know, I can't say personally that I have, and I believe if a lot of people were honest, they would say that they probably don't know what it really means to live life in its fullness as well. But yet, this is what he came to show. And there are times where I've thought to myself, as I've gone through this series, is when he says that she would become the mother of all living. Yeah, I mean, everybody who breathes, she would become the mother of that. But to look at that in a more metaphorical way, the mother of all the living, those who would actually know life and experience life, those who would strive to bring about life as Yah intended it, the mother of all living. Because when we look at her name, now let's remember what we learned about Yahawashi when I just said that word life means Zoe. It's Zoe in the Greek, and it means life. It means lifetime, alive. He came to give life. Well, when we look at Eve, her English, that's what it was translated as. In the Hebrew, her name is Kava. And it comes from H2332, which is from another word. And like I said, I'll put it all in the description box. And the other one that it comes from means life giver. To live, to declare, to show. Her one of the things that Yah designed her for, part of her power, part of her purpose, part of her role, was to show life in the way that Yah intended mankind to know life. Mankind could not know life. Mankind could not experience life. Mankind could not move out and take dominion over the earth. Mankind could not establish what Yah wanted him to establish on this earth without female man along and partnered right along his side, because she is the carrier of life. Like Yahushua came to give us life and to show us life, she was the one who carried life with it, had the ability, I'll say, to carry life within herself. I want to read some of the notes that I wrote down here in regard to her. And I think that this is really important for us to think about when it comes to the woman, when it comes to this woman that we know of as Eve. So one of the things that I wrote down here, some of the thoughts that came to me were this. Like our Hamashiach, she's the carrier of life. Kava, this woman that we know of as Eve, female man, is the part of mankind in which seed can be planted. You carry life. You bring forth life. You give life. You show life. You are designed for life. Your very structure is built for life. As female man with a womb, to carry life. No being aside from Adam himself has a portal into this earth without female man, without coming through her. So her very structure is built for life. This is what Yah wanted to reveal through the woman. Life in knowing, life in being, life in becoming, life in living, life in loving, life eternal. Life as he planned it from the very beginning. This is part of the essence. This is part of the role. This is part of the purpose. This is part of the power of female man. She is a life giver. Life is inseparable with who you are and why you were formed. How was Yah going to show life? And I talked about this a second ago. Through the woman. How was he going to reveal life? Through the woman. How was he going to present life in the earth? Through the woman. How was he going to know life or make life known? Through the woman. By what means was mankind to reproduce life whereby he might take dominion according to the will of the Most High? Through the woman. How was man going to be fruitful and multiply? Through the woman. The breath Yah blew into man. How man was intended to know God, to know himself, to know one another, to experience this force called life, to experience not just what it is to breathe, but to live, as I said earlier, through loving God and through loving others. This is the life that Yah intended to reveal through the woman. This is the life whereby Yah will establish his kingdom on earth. This is why there was enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. And this is why I believe that Yahushua is called the seed of the woman, because what Yah wanted to do through the woman is the very thing that Yahushua came to show us in real time. It's what he came to express. Yah was going to reveal the life of man in its fullness, in alignment with his word, through the woman. So then we see Yahushua come into this earth, and it is through his revelation of the word of the Most High. He's coming to express Yah's word. But what does that word give us? What does that word bring to us? Life. It gives us life. We are sanctified by it. We are made alive by it. So the same thing that he wanted to do through the woman is what he ultimately did through Yahushua in real time. And so thus he is called the seed of the woman. But I believe it goes further than that, because when we look at what he came to establish on this earth, any force, I'll say, that that fights against what Yah wanted to do through the woman, you could call the seed of the serpent. And so when the consequences were being passed out after the, during the fall, this is when we understand where he said that I'm going to put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed, and you're going to, bruise his heel, but he's going to pretty much crush your head. When we see that enmity, that struggle come into play, whether it be the prophets, whether it be Abraham, whether it be some of our forefathers who wanted to live righteous and do the right thing, anyone who is moving in on this journey where they want to be a part of establishing Yah's kingdom on this earth, expressing his word, bringing about his word, causing man to know life the way that Yah intended it, you could say they're flowing and operating in the character of the seed of the woman. Whereas anything that goes against that would be the seed of the serpent. They're always at war with each other. And the power structure that we see in this world today is a product of the seed of the serpent. Ultimately, that power structure is going to be destroyed. And the power structure that is in line with the seed of the woman is going to be what will be established for all eternity on this earth. Because it is the seed of the woman that is going to bloom, that is going to manifest, that is going to make known life in the way that Yah always intended life to be. And so we see Yahushua come to show us that in real time, but we also see that even before Yahushua came into the earth, because we see that through the preaching of the prophets. We see it through Abraham's life. We see it in Noah's life. We see it through all the righteous that went before. And then he comes in real time and shows us what that looks like in its fullness. Life the way that Yah intended. That is what he wanted to do and desires to do through the woman. So that the seed of the woman is the habitation of the righteous, because the seed of the woman is the way of the just. The seed of the woman was announced through the message of the prophets. The seed of the woman is the light that illuminates the darkness. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. And the light shined in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not, could not take hold of it, could not overpower it, could not seize upon it, could not extinguish it. The seed of the woman breaks the power of death through manifesting the way to life. The seed of the woman is the revelation of life, the consciousness of the kingdom, because it is the consciousness that brings forth the kingdom. So it is the consciousness of the kingdom because it is the consciousness that brings forth the kingdom. It is loving God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and loving our neighbor as ourselves. And in that way of being and in that consciousness, it is the type of life, the type of society that produces. That, you could say, is right in alignment with the seed of the woman. The seed of the woman is he who was sent to give life, to reveal life, to show life, to carry life, to restore life, to restore us to health, to restore us to wholeness, to bring salvation. The seed of the woman is our Hamashiach. And so when we look at this woman, we know as Eve, or who the scripture refers to as Kava. And we look at, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, that her name means to live, to declare, to show. That's part of it. But then also the words that are associated with her name, I'm going to go to those right now. And this is where I'm actually going to pull these up, because I think it's really important that we get a good understanding of this one. And again, I'm going to put all this in the description box. I'm not going to take time to go over a lot of numbers. I may mention them here and there, but I really just want to get out what I want to talk about today, in terms of this. And I'm going to do my best to wrap this up and make it just, one whole video instead of two. But so her name is Life or Life Giving. And so I talked about that being H2332 and coming from H2331. And then H2331 meaning to tell, to declare, to show, to make known, to live. That's what that means. And then that actually takes us to two other primitive roots. And the one is, again, to show, to interpret, to tell, to declare, to inform. And I'm going to put all this in the description box. But the other one is, and this is when you get to H2331, there's going to branch off. And it says a primitive root compare to H2324 and H2421. And the H2421 is kaya. And that one is to live, to have life, to remain alive, to sustain life, to live prosperously, to live forever, to be quickened, to be alive, to be restored to health, to live, to have life, continue in life, to sustain life, to live on or upon, to be revived, to be quickened from sickness, to be quickened or revived from discouragement, from faintness, from death, to preserve alive, to give life, to let live, to restore to life, to cause to grow, to restore, to revive, to preserve alive. All of these things to be restored to health. And is that not what Yahushua came doing? Is that not what we saw when we saw him with the man at the pool of Bethesda who had been in that state for 38 years? And he restored this man back to life because he healed this man. And then later said, change the way you do things and stop making the decisions you're making. Otherwise, something worse may happen to you. So even though, the reason I bring this up is because even though this man was in this state due to his own decisions and his own fault, sometimes we can think, I've gotten myself into this mess. I have, and I'm suffering the consequences for the mess that I've got myself into, and I know that I'm at fault. Just because it's your fault doesn't mean that Yah is not merciful. Just because it's your fault does not mean that he doesn't have a plan to help you to be restored, to give you another chance to live the way that you know that you need to live. The same thing with the woman who was caught in the act of adultery. You know, they brought her because we know they were trying to entrap him. But he had every right to judge her, but he didn't. He said, go and sin no more. He gave her another chance to live life the way that she was supposed to live life when he said, go and sin no more. Change the way that you do things. We saw it when he went to the woman at the well. And she was living with a man she wasn't even married to. And here we have the Messiah show up in her life for her because he had a divine appointment that he needed to be there at that time. Because there was something that she was looking for, and we know she was, because somewhere in that conversation, if you read that, she says when the Messiah comes, he's going to explain all these things to us. And what does Yahushua do? Well, he reveals himself. I am he. And so we know she was looking for something. The man who was cutting himself in the graveyard, who couldn't get to the Messiah, so the Messiah went to him and delivered him and set him free. We saw him restoring people to life, giving life, bringing life, carrying life, showing the way to life. Yet these are all the things, when we look at the woman, these are all the things that Yah intended always to do in the woman and through the woman. So this is part of your essence, female Adam, female man. This is part of your role. This is part of your purpose. This is part of your power. You are the one who carries life. You are the portal for life in this earth. And in being that portal for life in this earth, it is through you that Yah shows mankind the way that he was always supposed to live. Let me go back to my notes here. Let's see here. So, in thinking about this first woman, this woman that we know as Eve, who her name would have been pronounced something like Kava. Her name and each root of her name is connected to this function, this role, this purpose, this way of being that has to do with life, that embodies the essence of life itself. The divine ability. So not only is part of her role and her purpose to carry life and to bring forth life as Yah intended it, but through that, the divine ability to grant life to others. And when I say that, there are women who may not ever carry life. There are women who may never have children. There are women who may, and that may be. But it doesn't mean that we still can't understand who we are as female man and understand how we're wired and built for life, that we can still impart life to others. Simply speaking the word to others, loving others as we love ourselves, living a godly life. These are things that can impart this life to other people and open them up to experiencing life the way that Yah intended it. So I'm not saying through this video that a woman has to marry, that a woman has to have children. I'm not saying any of those things, because there are many women who will not. And in fact, we know that in Corinthians, Paul says that it's best, as far as he's concerned, he wishes all people were like him, that, to be single, because a woman who is not married has time to only worry about pleasing the Lord. She doesn't have to worry about pleasing her husband. A man who is not married can only worry about pleasing the Lord. He doesn't have to worry about pleasing his wife. So we see, these things, but he also says it's better to marry than to burn. Everybody is not gifted or wired in such a way where they can just live their life and maybe not have a partner, a companion, or something like that. So I'm not saying one or the other. I'm simply saying that as we're examining and looking at the essence, the purpose, the role, the power of the woman, I'm not saying that you have to do one thing or you have to do another thing. I'm not saying that you have to necessarily get married and have children to fulfill this. I'm saying that in life, there are other ways that we can see these things come about, and you may never get married and you may never have children. And it doesn't mean that doesn't mean anything. So I don't want any woman to look at this and say, well, what does that leave me? Because you're very much in this. You're still wired and made in that way, and it is still Yah's desire that as he fills you with life, that you allow that life to come out of you, and that you make that life known to others. And in that way, I don't really see that much difference. I'm just simply looking at this from the perspective of how the woman is wired, because there had been so many efforts, maybe not even where people have meant it in a bad way, to oppress and suppress the woman and make her sometimes seem like she's less, and she's not. Nothing can happen apart from her. Nothing, we're not even going to see the kingdom apart from her. So female man is extremely necessary to this whole process. And it was like that from the beginning. Woman was never an afterthought in the mind of the Creator. When he said, I'm going to create man in my image, so God created man in his image. When he did that, he created him male and female. He created him male and female. So I'm saying in the creation process, the plan that was always in his mind, he created them male and female. It was never, let me get man on the scene, and then, he needs a help. No, that's not what that was. So this was equal significance, equal importance, because they had an equal purpose in this earth. And it is imperative that we understand that as women. And it is imperative that men understand that, whether they're married or whether they're not married. Because far too often, this whole attitude, this imperialistic, oppressive attitude, it's just not godly. And in this series, this is where I'm calling it out for what it is. It's just not godly, and it's not right. And so until we understand the importance of female man and who woman is, we're never going to get where we need to be, because she has a very significant role and a very significant part in this whole process of not just who we are, but in terms of understanding life, experiencing life, nurturing life, and showing life the way that Yah intended life to be. And our very Messiah, the one who came into this earth, the one in whom we have to place our faith, the only one in whom that we can get life, or we can acquire life through him. He is the one who is called the seed of the woman. That ought to tell us something right there. I'm not trying to make one higher than the other, or one superior or one inferior. I'm saying that they're equal. And I'm saying, let's stop this foolishness of trying to make a woman lower, because she's not. She is absolutely not. So in closing this and in wrapping this up, I want to finish reading a little bit of what I wrote here. Let's see. So as I end the series, The Woman, her essence, her purpose, her role, her power, I pray that you would ever be filled with life. That the Most High, by his power and by his might, would help you to grasp the beauty of your feminine self. As Yah planned, as he purposed, from before the foundations, that he has planned you, that you have a role, that you have a purpose, and in that role and that purpose, in the essence of who you are, that you are powerful. That as we live our lives, that we would experience the abundant life that he came to give, living each day to the full, that we would grow and develop through facing and overcoming life's challenges. I pray that you would tap into parts of you that have not yet been revealed or known. Gifts, talents, things that reside in you that lay dormant, that you don't even know are there. That obstacles that are in your way that prevent these things from happening, that Yah would begin to reveal those for what they are, expose them for what they are. And if there are people who are close to you, that he would either change the hearts of those people, or that he would move those people out of their lives. And if it's something that's really harmful, that he will give you the courage to move yourself out of that situation. That you would persevere through difficulties, loving to live and living to love. Embracing you in who you are in the most authentic sense possible. This is the life that flows and inspires others to live. May Yah bless you and keep you. May he restore, repair, heal, reveal, cause you to revive in the areas of your life that you are in need. May he bring his salvation to you wholly, that you may bring salvation to those around you, that we might have a part and place in his eternal kingdom on this earth. And with that, I want to wrap this up, and I want to say shalom. And I want to say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for leaving your thoughts in the affirmative. Thank you for leaving your thoughts in the negative. And, I just appreciate you as the viewers. I'm going to be doing a lot more teaching on different topics. So this is, this was one that I felt like needed to be addressed, but this is not the only one that I'm going to be teaching on. I'm going to be teaching on a lot of different subjects. I may do a series on, like I said, 2 Timothy chapter 3. There are some other things I have in mind, and my prayer is by it that you would just be compelled to greater study and to spend more time in Yah's word, more time in meditation. Because like I said in the beginning, the power structures in the earth today that oppress the masses, that have stolen our minds, and tried to indoctrinate us and educate us in the way that they want us to be educated, to cause us to believe the way that they want us to believe, so that we act in the way that they want us to act, that exploit our labor and cause us from blooming in the fullness, because we're always busy working to be exploited, and while they pay us the minimum, they themselves become rich. So these power structures, these capitalists, these globalists that oppress mankind and deny him from his right to this earth that Yah has given all mankind, these power structures are going to be destroyed. And these power structures don't care if we sit around and talk about ourselves being Israel, as I said before. They don't. They probably think it's laughable. Where they get concerned is where we begin to take action. Where they get concerned is where we as Israelites understand that we are the vanguard for what Yah wants to do in this earth. Vanguard, meaning that we are going to be the ones that lead away. Without the Israelites, there will be no revolution. So we have to understand that and understand our place. We can't just look for a kingdom to come. We have to bring the kingdom to this earth. And that's where this revolution and this supernatural intervention is going to come. As we begin to align ourselves and to live the way that Yah wants us to live, to have this consciousness he wants us to have, to get past man, woman, all these things that we get all hung up on, these legalities and all this stuff. Once we can move past that and really begin to move in who it is that Yah has called us to be as individuals and then as a people, it is that power that we begin to move in, not just know, but we begin to move in, that is going to create the pathway for this supernatural intervention that is going to bring his kingdom to this earth in its fullness. And again, the kingdom is first revealed in us and through us. And as it is revealed in us and through us, that's when it is manifested on this earth. And we have a very significant role to play in that. So with that, again, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to say thank you for watching and viewing. I want to thank God for my sisters. And, just every day you get up, you praise and thank God for your womanhood. Don't you ever let anyone make you, if you have daughters, feel any less than who Yah has created you to be. Because Yah has created you to be something extremely special. And without you, without your essence, without your purpose, without your role, without your power, nothing is happening. Because when he created man, he created him male and female. And in terms of the power that he gave man to rule and take dominion, he said, let them have dominion in this earth. So you have a very significant part to play. And I want you to understand that, because it's as you understand that, you're going to begin to operate and to function in this power that Yah has created and designed you to function in. So however you are gifted, the giftings he's put inside of you, spread your wings and you begin to thrive in that and live fully in all that Yah has put in you and who he's created you to be, in this beautiful, intelligent woman that Yah has created you to be. And with that, I will say shalom. Enjoy the rest of your Shabbat and have a beautiful day. And we will talk next time.